4 nights of protests.
No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace.
Rock the Queen City after Keith Scott was shot and killed by a Charlotte Mecklenburg police officer.
Did you shoot him?
In cell phone footage captured by his wife, we see the moment it happens. His daughter broadcasts the following moments live on Facebook. Tensions immediately begin to rise.
I respect your position and how you feel.
Spontaneous riots follow throughout the night.
No justice!
16 officers have been injured.
As some dispute whether or not Scott was armed,
There was a book.
We did not find a book.
community leaders call for peace.
People stop listening when you have violence. They start getting worried about security.
But still, tensions grow,
Whose side is you on? I'm on their side.
and another man loses his life.
All the violence does not stop violence.
A continued call for change and peace.
All the hate will not drive out hate.
We are a peaceful city.
Our team coverage continues next.
The story is a little bit different as to how it's been portrayed so far.
Developing tonight,
But we're still going through all of the footage.
a man, Keith Scott, shot and killed by a Charlotte Mecklenburg police officer.
We all see this as a tragedy.
The department says he pulled a gun and was told multiple times to drop the weapon.
A weapon was seized.
There was a book.
We did not find a book.
When he didn't, he was shot by Officer Brentley Vinson. Vinson has been with the department for 2 years.
The police department should be thinking really seriously right now about releasing any footage that they have.
Hours after his death, the riots erupted.
We deployed gas. 16 officers have been injured.
Police cruisers and area stores vandalized. I-85 blocked and lit on fire. Tonight, the city says they're ready for whatever comes their way.
We all want to work toward a peaceful community.
Well, I told them be vigilant, be professional, and do the job that they've been trained to do and that they're committed to doing.
We continue to follow the latest in the aftermath of yesterday's deadly officer-involved shooting. CMPD officer Brentley Vinson shot and killed Keith Scott yesterday at the Village at College Downs while trying to serve a warrant on another suspect. Officers say Scott had a gun and posed an imminent threat, but loved ones still maintain that he was unarmed. His family just released a statement about the incident that reads in part, "As a family, we respect the rights of those who wish to protest, but we ask that people protest peacefully. Please do not hurt people or members of law enforcement, damage property, or take things that do not belong to you in the name of protesting." After listening to remarks made by Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Chief Putney today, we have more questions than answers about Keith's death. Rest assured, we work diligently to get answers to our questions as quickly as possible. Violent protests erupted last night after the shooting. 16 are growing in several spots around the city. Our team coverage continues with Time Warner Cable News Managing Editor Sean Flynn, who started out the epicenter, went to Trade and Tryon, then College and Trade. And Sean, I guess the crowd is just moving from spot to spot.
Yeah, exactly, Claudine. This is actually kind of a splinter group from that Marshall Park protest. About 150, maybe 200 or so protesters made their way from Marshall Park to Epicenter, stopped there for a while, kind of interrupted everybody's dinner, and then they went to Trade and Tryon, stayed there for a few minutes, mostly just chanting, and then they're making their way down College Street again, actually Trade Street, forgive me. You can see the police officers on their bicycles. They're staying back. They're making sure that the protesters are getting to say what they want to say. But they are keeping a close eye on them. As far as this group, these are not your violent protesters. These are people who want to say their mind. They have their chance, and they're out there. They're out here trying to say what they want to say. But so far, we have not seen any acts of violence. The only thing that we saw is when they shut down Trade and Tryon Street, a couple people jumped on a car that was there. But even when they were getting off their car, they were very nice not to try and dent it or anything like that. So far, so good. Again, they're now heading down Trade Street. We're told they're heading to back to Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department headquarters, where they were about an hour and a half ago. And I have a feeling they're going to keep on marching around so that they can make their voices heard. Reporting live in Center City, Charlotte, Sean Flynn. Back to you, Claudine.
All right, Sean, thanks a lot. And also, Time Warner Cable News reporter Kirsten Garris has been live at Marshall Park this evening, and she joins us now with more on what's happening in the park at this point. Kirsten, are things peaceful there?
Yes, Claudine, things are remaining peaceful here. We've seen a lot of groups kind of come and go, as Sean was saying. A lot of people left here and went down to the epicenter, but I want to back out real quick. There are still a good amount of people out here, probably a little over 100, who are praying. They are talking, they are chanting. We see some folks with the Billy Graham group who are now here praying with people. They are surrounding individuals, praying for them during this difficult time. I actually want to take us to, we have a WBTV Sky 3 video, just so you can see an aerial of what I'm seeing down here, because it's a little dark from my vantage point. But again, several people are out here. The prayer portion has already ended, but people are still out here kind of echoing the message of the family, which is protest, but protest in peace, do it peacefully. And the people we've talked to, a lot of people have mixed emotions about what has happened over the past 24 hours. Some of the pastors who are out here say that, they just want everyone from the police officer to Keith Scott to be judged equally. Like, we don't know we don't have all the answers right now in this investigation, so they're just asking folks to keep an open mind.
Black lives
some
matter.
folks, again, sorry for that interruption. There are some folks who are very loud out here, but mostly this is pretty peaceful. But the one thing that I've talked to a few people, and the one message they're also hitting home is, where do we go from here? What is next? A lot of people have said they've hit the boiling point with what's happened here and across the country, but where do we go from here? And that is the questions that a lot of people have, is when do we have that tough conversation? But for now, we're live in Marshall Park. Kirsten Garris, Time Warner Cable News.
The man behind the overnight protest on I-85 in Charlotte is speaking out. 23-year-old Conrad James says he intended to hold a peaceful protest, but once it escalated, he left. Time Warner Cable News reporter Chris Williams caught up with James, who said the situation went beyond his control.
When Conrad James heard about the police shooting of Keith Scott, he drove from Raleigh to Charlotte late Tuesday night.
But when I got there, the tensions were very high, very, very high tensions, very, very high tempers.
The 23-year-old community advocate shot cell phone video of the scene. He says there were thousands of angry people.
Physically touching the cops, not hitting them, not like being violent or anything, but just like physically getting in their face.
James then urged protesters to move to Interstate 85. Despite the traffic dangers, he felt it was the only way to get national attention.
Some means have to be taken that aren't completely sensible.
James says the protest began with chants, but then it turned violent. Fires were set, property was damaged, and tear gas was deployed. James left in disappointment and headed back to Raleigh.
The message to me is completely lost at that point. When you start actually rioting, when you start actually looting.
As for the shooting itself, James has trouble believing officers' story that Scott had a gun. He's inclined to believe Scott's family, who said he had a book.
I don't think that a family watching their father getting killed would necessarily make up anything.
James plans to go back to Charlotte to hold more peaceful protests. He hopes those who attend will have the same mission.
We can go in and talk to the chief of police. We can go in and talk to the mayor. That can only happen if we come at this from a compassionate side.
In Raleigh, Chris Williams, Time Warner Cable News.
James says he would like police to undergo more weapons and racial sensitivity training. He also urges citizens to know their basic rights.
On the heels of the continued HB2 controversy, and then after Tuesday night's riots involving an officer-involved shooting, the city of Charlotte's image is taking a hit. We'll take a closer look at the damage being done after a quick break. After a second night of riots,
he had a really huge chunk of his head missing right here.
Erupted through the city.
No justice, no peace.
Whose side is you on? I'm on their side.
The city of Charlotte begins to clean up the damage in Uptown.
This has been a difficult couple of days for the city of Charlotte.
We had a lot of looting.
City leaders
We are a peaceful city.
Are working to control the chaos.
I am incident commander of this operation.
The National Guard was deployed this morning.
Our main concern is safety.
We don't see a need to definitively shut the city down.
And some in the community demand to see the tape showing the moment a Charlotte-Mecklenburg police officer shot Keith Scott.
There must be transparency.
Release would be to the masses, and that's what I'm not going to do.
As lawyers representing Scott's family speak out for the first time.
Many feel as though they are inhuman until they are proven to be human.
Our team coverage continues next.
Breaking news this hour as we continue to follow the aftermath of this week's deadly officer-involved shooting. Within the last few minutes, we've learned that Charlotte Mayor Jennifer Roberts has signed a curfew order that goes into effect for the entire city at midnight in an effort to keep the peace. Time Warner Cable News managing editor Sean Flynn joins us live from outside of the Mecklenburg County Jail with more on what this means. Sean.
Well, Tara, this protest group is fast moving. A few hundred of them keep on moving around. They just did about 10 minutes ago the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Government Center. They're at CMPD headquarters, and they stopped here on 4th Street, on Trade Street and McDowell at the Mecklenburg County Jail. And you see all those lights up there? As they were chanting "No justice, no peace," you could see some of the inmates who are inside the jail. They were pounding their fists, they were turning on their lights, trying to signal down to the group that, hey, we're trying to support your message. Now, within the last half hour, we were there and we witnessed Charlotte Mayor Jennifer Roberts signing the official order ordering a curfew for later on this evening. Again, this was just after 9 o'clock this evening. We had just spoken to her about how things were going tonight. She indicated that they were considering a curfew, but we were there. We were the first to report that Charlotte will have a curfew beginning at midnight tonight. Here's what Mayor Roberts said just minutes after she signed that declaration.
So I was just signing an order to implement a curfew. And the curfew will begin at midnight tonight. It will be in effect until 6 a.m. and that will be in place until we decide to end the curfew. So we don't know how many days it will be in effect, but midnight to 6 a.m. from tonight and tomorrow night until we end that curfew.
Yeah, and Mayor Roberts did say that it is flexible, meaning that tomorrow night she could, or tomorrow they could have it a different time. They could put it at 6 p.m., 9 p.m., whatever they felt appropriate. Now, we asked her, we're like, why didn't we just do this earlier? And she's like, the chief wanted to see how things went tonight with the protests, and then we're like, why didn't you implement it immediately so they could go ahead and get the protesters off the streets? They said that the chief wanted to give everybody some time to let them know about this curfew. Now, as far as the curfew, there are exceptions to it. If you are working, for whatever reason, you have to be out in the streets, we will publicize all the rules why you're allowed to break that curfew on our website once we get those information. But otherwise, police can come up to you if you're on the street during that curfew time, tell you got to go, and if you don't, they can cuff you up. As far as this protest, as far as I've seen, it's been very vocal. They've been very adamant to get their message across, but it has been very peaceful. We haven't seen anything like we saw last night. Tara?
All right, thanks, Sean. And we continue to monitor developing protests and demonstrations around Uptown. Now, they've taken a violent turn in nights past, but so far that's not necessarily the case. But things seem to be escalating just a bit. Time Warner Cable News reporter Andrew Sorensen joins us now with the latest. And Andrew, what are you seeing where you're at?
Hey, yeah, like you're saying, it is calmer down here tonight. And we've been having some really interesting conversations on this corner of Trade and College. We're talking to faith leaders and people who are saying that they're just trying to get their message out and be heard. We're talking to Cameron here. He's a student. And Cameron, I asked you a question a little while ago. So, yeah, people are out here trying to get their voices heard and have this conversation of race in America finally. How do we come together and have that conversation? How do we bridge that gap?
Well, it comes to a certain thing of we have always been peaceful. We were peaceful last night. We were peaceful the night before. We were antagonized. And the fact that we were antagonized, the news, the media did not cover that. You only showed the part that where it was total anarchy out here, and that's not cool. But we want change. There has to be a change amongst the federal government. There has to be a change in the local government, and we're all looking for it. In regards to the tapes, we want to see those. If we don't see those, then we're still going to have a problem.
how do we have the conversations that need to be had, the broader issues here of equality and having the conversation actually be heard?
Well, it starts with these peaceful protests. Straight like that. It starts with the peaceful protests. And for having the National Guard out here, the police department out here, this could have been done yesterday.
And what in that conversation, what's the first thing you want to say?
Let's talk. Let's talk. Let's have a conversation. Let it not be y'all shooting at us, throwing things at us. Let it not be us throwing things at you. Let's have a conversation. Let's be adults about this. We're grown, right? Right. Straight like that. That's it.
Okay, we're having some interesting conversations here on this corner, and we'll be continuing to monitor the situation throughout the night and bringing you more here from Uptown. But now live, Andrew Sorensen, Time Warner Cable News.
All right, thanks, Andrew. A much different and much better scene from last night. And again, a curfew will be in place starting at midnight, and that goes to 6 a.m. for the entire city. And we'll continue to follow tonight's developments and bring you the very latest.
The family of Keith Scott has issued a statement after watching the body and dash cam police video from Tuesday's deadly shooting. They say, quote, after watching the videos, the family again has more questions than answers. When told by police to exit his vehicle, Mr. Scott did so in a very calm, non-aggressive manner. While police did give him several commands, he did not aggressively approach them or raise his hands at members of law enforcement at any time. It is impossible to discern from the videos what, if anything, Mr. Scott is holding in his hands. It goes on to read, the Scott family asked that the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department publicly, immediately release both of the videos they watched today. Attorneys representing the family held a news conference earlier Thursday where they said Scott's wife actually witnessed the shooting. The family now in deep mourning. Attorney Justin Bamberg says the chaos in the streets we've seen the last 2 days is rooted in a larger problem, the way African Americans feel when confronted by police.
They're guilty until proven innocent. They're a threat until they prove that they are not a threat. And quite frankly, many feel as though they are inhuman until they are proven to be human. That is the underlying problem.
The family continues to call for a calm, urging all protesters to do so peacefully.
Our team coverage of the aftermath of this week's deadly officer-involved shooting continues next. Stay with us.
Don't shoot him.
New tonight.
He has no weapon.
The family of Keith Scott released cell phone video of the moments before and after his death.
He doesn't have a gun. He has a TBI.
Officers were heard yelling at Scott.
Don't you do it. Keith!
His wife was behind the camera the moment.
Keith! Keith! Don't you do it!
He was shot and killed by a Charlotte-Mecklenburg police officer.
We're gonna shoot him? He better not be dead. He better live.
It prompted 2 nights of violent riots in the Queen City that claimed another man's life.
He was shot and killed, as you know, during the demonstration.
Last night, demonstrations took a much more peaceful tone, but the National Guard and police remained ready for anything.
They're under a lot of fatigue and a lot of stress.
We've been in front of this story since the beginning, and that coverage continues.